For those of you who are new here and maybe aren't familiar with QGive is a nonprofit software company. We serve over 6,000 nonprofit organizations throughout the US and Canada with various online giving tools, including donation forms, auction tools, peer-to-peer, and event registration forms. We regularly host webinars like this one to educate our clients and just continue to provide best practice resources so that y'all can raise more for your mission. Today, our phenomenal speaker is Lesa-Kaye. She is a grant writing expert and has over a decade of grant writing experience and has helped nonprofits raise over $16 million for their causes. So I'm going to go ahead, Lesa-Kaye, and turn it over to you.
Hello, everyone. Making sure everyone can hear me. I'm so excited to be here today. Before we jump in, one tiny change, which I guess I didn't update my bio before I shared it with Melania. I am now at $30 million and counting in grants secured for nonprofits, community organizations, local governments, and higher education institutions. I'm really excited to be here with you today. We are going to be talking about how to find and engage grant funders for your nonprofit. So how to find and engage grant funders for your nonprofit. Looks like I am not yet able to share my screen. Melania and Wendy don't have sharing capabilities yet. Looks like Melania, you're still sharing your screen. Perfect. Just give us a second to transition screens and we will get started. So while we're doing that, I just want to say before we start, grab a pen and paper because I am going to be dropping grant gems that you do not want to miss. Try as best as possible to limit distractions around you. I know that's sometimes a little bit tricky. Sometimes there's a cat in the background or a kid, or you get a phone call, but try as best as you can to limit distractions so you don't miss anything and get ready to participate. I love hearing from you and hearing your questions. So make sure you put your questions in the Q&A box. I'm going to be asking you questions to get to know you. Also, I want to hear about your experiences when it comes to grants. So get ready to type and share in the chat box. And also we're going to be, getting to learn a little bit more about each other over the next 40 or so minutes. And we will have a Q&A towards the end. So type your questions in the Q&A box and we'll be sure to get to those towards the end of today's webinar. If we don't get to your question at the end of the webinar, please feel free to reach out to me at hello@fromlesakaye.com. That's hello@fromlesakaye.com. You can also find me on LinkedIn. And my email address is towards the end of these slides. And I'll be sure to also put it in the chat box as well. So that is a little bit about what you can expect today. Now, I just want to hear from you and learn a little bit about you. So let me know in the chat, where are you Zooming from? Where are you joining us from? Have you applied for grants before? Maybe you've won grants before. And so complete this sentence. I am here today because. Complete this sentence. I am here today because. So put that in the chat box. All right, I saw a lot of Northern Virginia, which is quite interesting because I'm in the Northern Virginia area. I saw some Florida, that's my original hometown. Stopped there for a little bit. Before that, I lived in Jamaica, born and raised. I saw someone from California, got some family out there, some friends out there. New Jersey, I've raised over 25 million, looking to learn something new. Wow. Congrats, Catherine. Really excited that you are here today. See Chicago, more New Jersey, quite a lot of New Jersey people here today. Interesting. All right. North Dakota, Wyoming. Wow. People from all over. Really excited that you are here to join us. And someone shared they are here today because I'm also trying to stay up to date on funding opportunities. Excited that you're here today, Christine. Good to see you. And someone also said, I'm here today because I want to learn ways to grow our grant program. All right, so it looks like we are here and we are ready to jump right in. And so as you're continuing to share and get to know each other in the chat, I'm going to share a little bit more about me, some things that you're not going to find in a professional bio anywhere. So like I said before, I was born and raised in Jamaica, stopped a bit in Florida. Now I live in the DC area, specifically Northern Virginia. And when I am talking about something I am excited about, like grants, you will hear a very interesting mix of an accent come out. Like, is it a Jamaican accent? Is it a Florida accent? Is it like a DC area accent? It's all mashed together. Comes out when I get really excited when I'm talking about grants. So listen really closely, you'll hear that. I am a grant professional certified and a nationally approved grant trainer, which means I am not new to grants. I am true to grants. That's what I like to tell people. I've worked at nonprofits for well over a decade. I've worked at universities. I now work for a consulting firm in Washington, D.C. That has been my 9-to-5 life for the last 15, 20 years. And for the last, I would say, 3 years or so, my 5-to-9 work is I help community organizations, nonprofits learn and master the skills they need to win their first or next grant. So I'm the person that organizations call when they want to build or even rebuild their thriving grant program. And I also support fellow grant professionals in building their confidence, competencies, and grant careers. So grant professionals come to me to learn and grow as well. But I want to tell you, it was not always this way. Why I do what I do is because shortly after my first nonprofit job, the executive director came to me and said, hey, you got to write a grant. And my reaction was, yikes, I've never written a grant before. I do not know where to start. I'm completely clueless. I'm not even a good writer. Raise your hand if you are a part of the club of self-proclaimed bad spellers. I'm like the president of that club. So I can't even write a grant proposal. That's what I thought. This was well over 15, 20 years ago. Do any of these thoughts sound familiar? Any of these thoughts has anyone had similar thoughts that they can't write a grant because they're not a good grant writer, they don't know where to start, they've never written a grant before, so they feel like they can't be successful? Well, I am here to help you. This is what I do. I am here to help you also not make the costly mistakes that I made when I was trying to win my first grant. So that is a little bit about me, and what we are going to cover today specifically is we're going to start with a quick recap of the grants process. You're going to see me look to the side because I want to make sure that my timer is going and we have time for Q&A at the end. So remember to type your questions in the Q&A box. I do want you to really pay attention to today's webinar. Really, even though I said, get your pen and paper, but don't try to focus on trying to write down every single thing that I say, because you will get a recording of today's webinar so you can go back and process all of the gems and all of the things that I'm going to cover today. So we're going to do a quick recap of the grants process. I'm going to walk you through the framework that I've used to find the right grant funders, the different types of grant funders and grants, how and where to find them, and the key steps that you need to take to prepare for and conduct your grant research. And then we're going to talk a little bit about how do you determine if when you find a funder, like, are they the right fit for your organization? So that's what we're going to cover today. So I'm going to talk really, really fast, hopefully not too fast. And like I said, I'm a huge grant nerd, so I'm going to cover as much as possible in the next 45 minutes. I got my notes to help me stay on track. I've got my timer. So let's jump right in with a bit of a crash course on grants, so we're all talking from the same place. Are we ready? Are we ready? Yeah.
Can you click the presenter mode button? It's right next to like the zoom out, zoom in on the bottom right of your screen. That'll put it in presenter mode so it's bigger for everybody.
Let me see if I find it. On my screen, I'm seeing the full slides. Let me.
Oh, it might be sharing. It might be
Let's do
sharing your
this,
PowerPoint screen.
which is odd. 1 second. We're going to stop sharing screen and then go back. Let's see. It should be sharing the screen that I thought it was sharing. Is it still on not on presenter
Perfect.
mode? Okay, great. That's
You
odd
got
because I thought that's what we were showing. Weird. Zoom.
Thanks.
Crazy. Okay, so let's jump right in. Okay, so a grant is a sum of money given by one organization or government agency for a particular purpose. That's the basic definition of what a grant is. So the most popular question I get asked on the street everywhere I go is, how do I get grants? So how do you get a grant? Simplest explanation, a grant is won or awarded as a result of a grant proposal, sometimes referred to as an application. It's a competitive application process, and only the eligible organizations that are the organizations eligible for that grant can apply. So it's a competitive application process that only eligible organizations can apply for that grant. The application process, who is eligible, the deadlines, what the requirements are, that is all determined by who is giving the grant. So we're going to talk a little bit more about the who. So who gives grants and why? So who gives grants? So there are, I would say, a few categories of what we call grant makers or funders. Who gives grants? So there's government, foundations, corporations, faith-based organizations, and civic groups. So within the types of grant makers and funders, who gives grants are government agencies. So these are government agencies at all levels of government, local government, state government, federal government. They're agencies and departments within government at those levels, they give grants. Then there are foundations. And there are foundations of different types. And these are grant-making foundations, because every foundation that exists doesn't necessarily give grants. So these grant-making foundations include private foundations. So a private foundation may be, Cigna Foundation, which would be a corporate foundation, a family foundation, where a family to continue their legacy and make a difference, or the legacy of a person decides to create or establish a foundation. Those are family foundations. And then there are community foundations. The one thing I do want to let you know is that almost every community in the United States has a community foundation. So there is the Washington Area Community Foundation. That's in my area. There is the Northern Virginia Community Foundation. There is the Women's Area Foundation. But I don't believe that's their exact name, in the Washington, D.C. area. You can find your community foundations at a site. It is called COF for Community Foundations, cof.org, I believe, or Council of Foundations. That's actually the full name. So Council of Foundations, that website will give you a map of all of the foundations across the country, and you can search by geographic location and find your community foundation. Then corporations also have foundations. So like I said, Cigna Foundation, Care First, Blue Cross Blue Shield, Ben & Jerry's Foundation, Target has a foundation. And so these are corporations that have what they call a foundation arm, and they decide that is how they will do their philanthropic giving to organizations. And then there are corporations that don't have a foundation, but then give through the corporation itself, through sponsorships, gift cards, and other in-kind services sometimes. Faith-based organizations, there are some churches and organizations that do give grants, and then there are civic groups that also give grants. So your urban leagues, your Rotary clubs, those are also places or who gives grants. Not all of them do, but there are a number of civic organizations that give grants. Your junior leagues often give out grants. So these are just some of the who gives grants. And then there are different types of grants. So I'm just going to run through these very quickly. There's general operating grants that supports the general operations of your nonprofit. It's not for a specific program, but it helps with, paying for personnel. It helps with running your organization day-to-day, the day-to-day operations. Those are the types of grants. There are not too many general operating grants out there in the world. They are like, the diamonds of grants, if you will. So when you find one, it's great. When you get one, it's also great, because lots of foundations typically don't give out general operating support grants. They usually would give out for a program or a project. So then you have your program grants. So a program grant is for a specific program, a specific initiative. Programs usually have, run on a cycle. So maybe it is a boot camp or a training, or a screening program, a treatment program, a program that provides tutoring, for example. There are also research grants. There's training grants, as I mentioned before, grants to help you plan something, capital building and improvement grants. So if you are, there are grants to help you build buildings, do renovations to buildings as well. There are grants for events, not events that are fundraisers, but if it is a health education event, for example, if it is an event to educate individuals or to screen individuals, say for a COVID or for any kind of health condition. So there are grants that do support events, not fundraising events, but anything related to education or health screenings. Those are the types of grants that fund events. Then there are grants for conferences and meetings, and then there are grants that don't provide cash at all. They provide in-kind services or products. So there, for example, is a grant given out by Comcast Rise, and they provide in-kind services and marketing. They provide products such as laptops, internet service. So they don't provide monetary funding, but they provide support through these in-kind services and products. And that is a grant that you have to apply for, and there is a competitive process. So these are the different types of grants. There's general operating, program, research, training, planning, capital building and improvements, events, conferences and meetings, in-kind services, and products. And so it's really important to understand when you look at a grant to see, based on the type of grant that it is, and it will say this is a general operating grant, or it may even say we do not support general operating, or it will say this is a research grant. This grant supports planning. This grant provides in-kind services. So you want to make sure that when you find a grant, that you are looking at what type of grant this is, and is it aligned with what your needs are and what you're looking for. So beyond grants, one of my favorite pastimes is watching game shows and crime mysteries, but game shows is what we're going to focus on today. So today we are going to play one of my favorites, Family Feud. So get ready to type in the chat box. We are going to play Family Feud. Are we ready? Are we ready? Are we ready? Are we ready? All right. Yes. Okay. I see people saying that they are ready. Okay. So we being me, we asked 100 grant funders, why do grant applications get rejected? We are looking for the top 3 reasons. So top 3 reasons. Top 3 reasons why do grant applications get rejected? Top 3 reasons why. Type your answers in the chat. Top 3 reasons why grant applications get rejected. Top 3 reasons why. Let's see what people are saying. Do we have any winners? Let's see. Doesn't meet the criteria, missed the deadline. Okay, not enough funding to go around. That is a common reason. No top reason, but it's a common reason. Lack of outcomes, goals unclear. Somebody's getting a gold sticker. Okay. Missed the deadline. That's happened to me before. I will tell you about that in another webinar and how to bounce back from that. Incomplete documents, not eligible, incomplete and poorly written. Okay. All right. So are we ready for the answer? Okay, here we go. So the top 3 reasons why grant proposals get rejected. So are we going backwards today? Reason number 1, the organization, the program, or the project does not fit with the funder's interests and requirements. Remember, these are the top reasons why. So one of the top reasons, the organization, the program, the project that was submitted to the funder in the grant application is not a fit for their interests and does not meet their requirements. Number 2, it's an unclear project or program plan. So what happens? Your grant proposal and application is unclear. So an unclear plan for the program or the project that the applicant is seeking funding for, it's unclear. So then the grant application is unclear. One of the things that I tell my grant writing clients is, if it's not planned well, it's not going to be written well. So having a clear plan helps whoever is writing it, whether it's you or you hire a grant writer, to have a clear grant proposal and application. The third is the organization, the program, or the project is not ready for grants. So with all this said, in order to successfully win grants, your organization must be prepared to not only apply, but manage the expectations and meet the requirements of the funder. And the other part of that is finding and picking funders that are most likely to award you the grant, because your organization, your program, your project matches their interests, like your interests are their interests. So I'm going to tell you a short story. Remember I mentioned that 15, 20 years ago-ish, we're not going to go into specifics in terms of my age today. When I was trying to win my first grant, I made a number of mistakes. I just didn't know better at the time. I thought all we needed was a well-written grant proposal. I was like, okay, if I just get really good at writing, we will get these grants. I also thought having an important cause was enough to win grants. I was like, this is really important. We are saving the lives of children. They are going to give us this money. And the biggest mistake I made was every single grant that I found, I applied for. So this is what I did. I would find a grant. I'd be like, okay. And then I would write the grant proposal and then I would submit it. And what do you think happened every single time? Every single time I would wait patiently for a response. Now, back in the day, now you get an email response. Back in the day, it would come in the mail. And there would, I would get the envelope and I would open it and it would say, unfortunately, your application was not approved, not rejected. We will not be awarding this grant every single time. And I was just like, what is going on? Like, what am I doing incorrectly? And through doing that for a few times, it took really kind of taking a step back and going, well, now I learned doing the same thing over and over again is not going to get me a different result. And what I learned was that success is 80% planning and 20% writing. I did not have a plan, or rather my plan was I would find a grant, write it, and then submit it and hope that it would get awarded. And that really was not working because I really did not have a plan. I did not have a plan for finding grants that match the program and fit with the interests, the priorities, the values of the nonprofit that I was working at. I didn't have a plan for, okay, how do I prepare the organization, and also what is our plan for positioning this program in a way that makes it interesting or of interest to that funder, that makes it competitive, that makes it robust and shows the work that we're doing. I didn't have a plan for how I was going to put together an application. I was just like, okay, I found this grant and I'm just gonna power through and write it. I did not have a plan for any stage of the grants process. And I learned through trial and error that you need a plan for every single part of the grants process. So what I learned very early on, and this is the process that I've used over the last 15, 20 years to win grants and to move forward to bigger grants and to move on from nonprofits to universities to local governments. This is the same process I take them through. The first part of the process is readiness when it comes to grants. So there are 5 stages to the grants process. The first stage is readiness. Readiness is demonstrating your ability to produce results and that you're a safe and sure investment. You're a good partner in the community. You are legit on paper. And people in the community, not everyone, but people in the community know your work and know what you do. That was the first stage and the first thing that we had to focus on at the nonprofit that I worked at in order to win that first grant. The second stage was research, finding the right funders and relationships, qualifying that funder that we found was a fit for our organization. So through building relationships with that funder, determining, is this really a fit, or should we not waste our time submitting this grant to this funder that is not going to award us a grant because we don't fit what they're interested in, and they don't fit our values and what we are trying to do. So through relationship building, was able to qualify whether or not a funder was a fit, and is it worth actually sitting down and writing this? The third or fourth stage is writing, which is kind of self-explanatory, but it's really about making a clear, compelling case that connects the needs of the community, the work of your organization, and the funder's goals. And then the fifth stage was reporting, like, yay, we won the grant. So now we have to, what I call, demonstrate that you can produce results and that you can manage money. So I call it receipts and reports and results. That's the reporting stage. And so going through and recognizing the stages of the grants process, I was like, wait a minute. So writing is the fourth stage, which means I was doing this whole thing wrong. I was so focused on, I got to write a grant. It's got to be perfect. I got to be a great writer, when I missed all the other steps. So today, last year's webinar, we focused on readiness. Last year's webinar with QGIve was focused on readiness. So today we are going to focus on research and relationships and having a plan for that stage. So I'm going to take you through the beginning steps to kickstart your grant search journey. And there are 3 important decisions you and your nonprofit need to make. And the good news is I'm going to give you the details. I'm going to tell you the questions you need to answer and give you some guidance to be able to answer those questions today. Okay, all right, so let's get in. So the key decisions are, number 1, what are your nonprofit's funding priorities, and what type and how much funding is needed to support these priorities? Number 2 is, what keywords will you use to guide your search, and what methods and tools will you use to schedule and start your search? So those are the key decisions. And I'm going to put in the chat guide. It's a PDF guide that also has, it's a free PDF guide. And it also has, someone said no bonus round for Family Feud. Maybe next time, Mark. So I put in the chat that you can get a free PDF guide where it's going to walk you through these decisions even in more detail than I am today in the time that I have. And it also includes a downloadable Excel spreadsheet worksheet to help you organize your organization's funding priorities if you're a large organization that has a number of programs and projects. So let's jump in. First decision, what are your nonprofit's funding priorities? What type and how much funding is needed to support these priorities? So we're going to break down, how do you answer these questions? So to find the right grant funding for your nonprofit, you must connect the dots between your nonprofit's needs and your nonprofit's mission and the funder's interests. So to connect these dots, and before you begin your grant search, you have to have clarity on your nonprofit's priorities, your community's priorities, and what you need to support these priorities. So to get the clarity you need and the direction that you deserve to confidently find grant funders to help you unlock the possibilities for your nonprofit and your organization, you want to start with identifying the funding priorities and needs of your nonprofit and your community. So you want to start with identifying the funding priorities and needs of your nonprofit and your community. Really important. A lot of times nonprofits focus on what they need, and funders will tell you that they really are not that interested in what the nonprofit organization needs. They want to know what the community needs and how the nonprofit is looking to help support the community, help fill those needs for the community, and how they can partner with the nonprofit to address the community's needs and priorities. So your needs are important, but your needs are really focused on like, what do you need in terms of funding and partnership to help support the community's needs, right? So that's why it's your nonprofit and the community. By identifying both of those priorities and needs helps you to kind of complete this sweet spot and connect the dots. So this is how you start with this. I recommend that you each year you kind of gather your staff, your board members, key volunteers, community partners, and you answer these questions. Are there new programs needed or planned? If yes, what are they? Are there programs that need to expand? Are there special one-time projects that your nonprofit would like to implement? Are there programs that need additional support? These questions are going to help you identify what needs funding, what are the priorities. And from that link that I put in the chat, I'll put in the chat again. This will give you access to this spreadsheet that will help you kind of make a list of your priorities, how much it costs, the type of items that you need, whether it's supplies or new personnel. And it has a section for keywords, which we're going to talk about soon. So after you kind of gather your team, gather your volunteers, your board members, community partners, whoever it is that you're working with to answer these questions, the next step that I recommend that you would take is for each of the priorities that you identify the type of costs. As I said before, do you need new personnel? So you need salary for that. Maybe it's you have, you run a homeless shelter and the roof is just not going to hold up next winter. So you want to renovate. So there's renovation costs. Maybe you give out scholarships to students. Maybe it's that you need laptops, or you need to support travel for staff or your clients that you serve, your beneficiaries that you provide services to, or like I said, or current staff, you need to, support or fill a gap in the salary of your current staff. So identifying the type of cost and how much money do you need. And the reason I'm stressing that is that when you're looking for grants, if you find a grant and it doesn't support, it says, we don't pay for renovation, and you're like, well, that's what we need money for, don't apply for that grant. If you find a grant and it's like, the max we will give you is $5,000, and you're like, we really need 50. So if I apply for this 5, where am I going to get the other 45 from? So it's going to help you identify grant opportunities and funders that are best aligned for the priorities and needs that you've identified. Then the next step I recommend is for you to write 1 to 2 sentences about each of these priorities, including the amount of money and the type of cost. And then I want you to share this list with your organization's leadership, share it with other fundraising staff if you have them, share it with your board of directors 100%, so that they have a clear understanding of, this is what we are raising money for this year. These are the top priorities. We need $50,000 to renovate this roof. And this is a description of what we need the money for. We need $50,000 to renovate the roof. And that's it. It's clear. Clear 1 to 2 sentence description about each priority, the amount of money, and the type of costs. And share that list with others so that they know these are the priorities. We're looking for grants. If you find a grant, this is what we're looking for. Or even if you come across an individual donor or a corporate sponsor that is looking to support our organization, this is what we need money for, right? So it's your little cheat sheet each year I used to give it a name every year based on how many I would come up with. So one year we came up with 13 and I was like, these are our dirty dozen. And one year it was 16. I was like, these are our sweet 16, just to make it a little interesting. But you can, of course, do it, make it as creative and interesting as you want. But this is really a way to also incorporate your grant seeking into the larger picture of your fundraising. So I just want to give you a quick word, just give us a little bit of a break, and a quick word about grants and give you a little bit of advice. Grants cannot start, save, or sustain your nonprofit or any nonprofit. And the reason I really stress this is because on average, it can take 3 to 6 months, sometimes even an entire year, to get a response from a funder after you submit a grant application. And we already know that grants are also not a guarantee. It's not guarantee money. So it's best for you to have a plan for funding your nonprofit's identified priorities and needs. That's a mix of different revenue sources, not grants alone. So you want to have a mix. You want to have individual donors, earned revenue that maybe you get from goods or providing services. Perhaps you're doing a sliding fee scale. So you want to have a mix of revenue sources, and you want to include grants in that, but you should not be relying on grants alone, whether you are starting out or you're trying to save your organization or to completely sustain your organization, right? So there are lots of resources such as QGive that can help you with peer-to-peer fundraising, and other ways to build a full fundraising program. Grants should be a part of your fundraising program. And so what we just went through in terms of identifying your funding priorities and needs is not just for grants or to help you find grants, it's to also help you identify what you need to raise money for from those other sources. All right, decision number 2. So decision number 2, to find the right grant funding for your nonprofit, you must connect the dots between your community's needs, your nonprofit's mission and work, and your funder's interests. So to find the connection to the funder's interests, you also need to decide what keywords best describe your nonprofit's work and the community that you serve. So what keywords best describe your nonprofit's work and the community that you serve? Keywords are really important because they're going to help you find that match between your priorities that you identified and the words that the funder uses to describe their interests. So the right keywords are going to help power your grant search. So how do you pick keywords to power your search? So what I recommend, step number 1, is to ask your organization, staff, board members, key volunteers, community partners, what words do they use to describe the priorities, the needs, to describe the work that you do, to describe the needs of the community, to describe the community itself? What words do they use? And then I want you to pick at least 1 to 2 keywords for each of these categories. So pick 1 to 2 keywords that describe the subject or the cause, the work that you do, the community or population that you serve, your geographic location, and the type of grant or funding support that you need. Are you looking for general operating? Are you looking for a capital grant? You're looking for renovation costs. You're looking for funding to support a training program. You're looking for funding for a health education event. So pick 1 to 2 words for each of these categories. So the categories, the subject or cause, the population that you serve, the community you serve, your geographic location, which should be pretty self-explanatory. So you may not even need to pick keywords, but make sure you include your geographic location and the type of funding support that you need, the type of grant that you need. let the keywords be your guide, but I also want to just give you a little bit of advice about keywords. So a quick word about keywords is to also try different combinations and variations. So if you have a keyword and it's children, excuse me, you may want to consider adding child also as a keyword. You may want to combine your keywords across categories. I always do that. So for example, I'm looking for college preparation. That's the subject. Los Angeles is the location. High school students is the community or population. Scholarships is the type of funding. And I put all those keywords in the search tools that I'm using to find that funder. And so when I combine also my keywords, they're going to narrow the search of what comes back in terms of funders that match college preparation, Los Angeles, high school students, and scholarships. Now, if it's too narrow, then I start taking out some of the keywords to make it my search be a little bit more flexible, right? So decision number 3, what tools will you use to schedule and start your search? Now, just a quick word about tools. I messed this up on my slides. I'm going to flip forward and then flip back. So what methods and tools will you use to schedule and start your search? Now, grant search, you can either do it yourself, DIY. It can be a DIY task, or you can choose to hire a grant professional as a consultant to conduct what we call grant prospect research. The benefits of hiring a grant professional is that they've done it, maybe more than you have, so they have a little bit more experience, and they have access. They may have more access to the tools than you do. So that's some of the benefit, and of course, time. If you don't have the time to do it, the grant professional may have access to various grant research databases. They're going to have specific knowledge on type of grants, type of funders, based on the keywords that you provide them. However, plenty of nonprofits DIY their grant research, and they have lots of success, and they use either free or low-cost tools, which I'm going to share with you. If you decide to take the DIY route, I do want you to consider how much time you're going to dedicate to your grant research. 1 second, gotta take a sip of water. Okay. When will you conduct your search? How often? Is it going to be weekly, monthly, or, excuse me. Ooh, okay. When will you conduct, wow, what happened there? When will you conduct your grant research? Is it going to be weekly, monthly, or are you going to do a search at the beginning of the year, and then you're going to follow up each quarter? So really identify how often you're going to conduct your grant research. Pick your search tools. So remember, we said we're going to go back. So a word about free and paid tools. So free tools are great, but there are some information gaps. You do have to dedicate more time because a database is going to collect all the information for you, versus, say, a paid tool where all that information is collected for you. Sometimes there's a little bit of a learning curve with the paid tools, and it does cost money. So the one thing I will say is, people always ask me, what do I use? And I always say, I actually use a combination of free tools and paid tools, because there are going to be some things that are not going to be in a database. I'm not going to wait for someone to aggregate all the information and put in a database. Google might help me find a grant that is not in a database because the grant just got released yesterday. So I use a combination of free and paid tools. And whether you decide to use, free, paid, or a combination of tools, just consider the pros and cons of whatever tool that you're using. Okay, so picking your search tools, there are paid online databases like Instrumental, Foundation Directory Online, GrantStation, and as I mentioned, these will help you find foundation and corporate grants. But there are also free places, and I have a blog on my website 10 free places to find grants for your nonprofit. So there are a number of places you can find grants. There are industry emails, retailers, like I said, Target gives out grants. Almost every grocery store gives out grants. Google is your friend sometimes. Candidates Foundation Directory Online Quick Start. There's also, most libraries have a free access to the Foundation Directory database. Grants.gov is free to use to find federal government grants only. And then locally, you can engage your grant offices. If you are a health organization, you may want to look at your health department. You may want to look at your community affairs department or office in your local government. If you are focused on education, you may look at the education agency in your government. So there are lots of free places to find grants. And then a quick word, if it's not scheduled, it will not happen. And what I mean by that is that even for me, if I do not prioritize conducting grant search, if I don't put it on my calendar, it's going to get lost in the shuffle of all the things that you're juggling while running a nonprofit, working at a nonprofit. So you want to put a specific date on your calendar of when you're going to do your initial search and how often are you going to conduct your follow-up search. Is it weekly, biweekly, monthly, quarterly? You want to put those dates on your calendar. Okay. All right, so I'm going to give you some bonus tips because I just decided I was going to throw these in here like last minute. So how do you determine if a funder is a fit for your nonprofit? One of the things I say is when you know the why, you know the way. If you know why a funder is giving, then you have more of an understanding of what direction you need to go in terms of writing the grant. You have an idea of which of your projects or programs are a fit for that funder and why they are giving. So why do funders give? Some give because they want the tax break. For corporations, some of them give because it's aligned with their mission and values. Family foundations and other foundations also give because they have a personal passion for an interest. Government is giving as a way to implement public policy. Excuse me. So at the height of COVID, which hopefully these coughs are not COVID that I'm having and it's allergies, but at the height of COVID, we saw COVID relief funding because there was policy related to that was passed, the law passed. So there, with federal government grants, actually all government grants are always linked to a policy, and the way that they bring that policy to life through action is through grants. And some funders give because they want the publicity of doing great in the community. So understanding the why behind why that funder gives helps you to sometimes identify whether or not this funder is a fit for your interests, the priorities and needs that you have identified for your community and your nonprofit. So it's all about the right fit. Do your priorities align? Do you have the same expectations? Are you on the same page? And timeline is also important. So you want to look at when that grant is awarded, does it fit with your program or project schedule? If it's a grant that is awarded in May, but you're like, we need to have this roof done in like before the end of January, then the timeline for that funder may not match the timeline of when you need the funding. So that's another thing to consider. So these are my final kind of search tips for you. If it's not scheduled, it will not happen. Be clear on what you're looking for. So identify the needs and priorities of your nonprofit and your community. Let your keywords be your guide, but use different combinations and variations. Start with very narrow search requirements and then expand, get flexible if you don't get the results that you're looking for. And most importantly, stick to your non-negotiables and values. You really want to make sure that you are partnering with funders. You are getting grants that align with your organization's values, and you are not harming the community and the people that you work with by partnering or getting grant funding from a funder that doesn't align with the values of your organization. Okay. All right, so these are some of my favorite resources, and you will get a copy of these slides and a recording of this webinar, so you will have all of this. GrantStation, that is a paid subscription that you have to sign up for to help you find grants. Same with Foundation Directory and Instrumental. P&D alerts, you can sign up for that. You get emails weekly of funding opportunities, grants that have been released. These are specifically foundation and corporate grants, not government grants. There's grants.gov, that is federal grants only, and it is free. Candid 990 Finder, all of these things are online, by the way. And like I mentioned before, you can find your community foundation at the Council on Foundations Community Foundation Locator. So if you do, you search for Council on Foundations, you'll find their website. And on their website, they have a locator where you can find your community foundation. And of course, there's my blog, 10 free ways to find grants for your nonprofit. And my favorite blog, What Dating Taught Me About Finding and Winning Grants for Nonprofits. Lots of lessons there learned. All right, these are ways that I can support you. After the webinar, I host monthly workshops. Usually they're 3-hour workshops. They're a lot more interactive than this. We do activities, we play music, we have hot seats. You get a lot of one-on-one time with me, and you get to meet other nonprofits and other nonprofit professionals as well. Clarity sessions, if you want to work one-on-one with me, I will put that link in the chat. You can book sessions with me, 30 minutes to even 50 minutes, whatever works best for you. And then I also do group training. So if you are interested in bringing me to an association, a church group, your nonprofit, I am really excited to do group trainings, looking forward to doing more of them online and in person next year. And so, excuse me, one of the things that I teach, or I'm teaching in December and January, is this full framework to finding the right funder for your nonprofit. So I walk you through this entire framework, and if you are interested in joining that workshop, you can join the list here at from Lesa-Kaye.com/finding grant funders. So if you sign up for the free guide, it's a special invitation to those who access the guide to join the workshop in December. All right. So these are the places you can find me at FromLesaKaye.com. You can find me on social media at FromLesaKaye everywhere, including LinkedIn, Instagram, and Twitter. Such a pleasure spending the afternoon with you, going over my favorite topic, finding the right funders for your nonprofit. And I'm going to turn it back over to Melania to see if we have time for quick questions, because we are right at the top of the hour.
Perfect. Thank you so much, Lesa-Kaye. That was fantastic. I know like Lesa-Kaye said, it's the top of the hour, but we do have time for questions. So if you have to hop off, don't worry. We're going to stay back here and take a time to look at some of these questions. I would encourage everybody, there is a brief survey that will pop up once you leave the Zoom webinar. Please fill out the questions and let us know what you thought of today's lesson. So, Lesa-Kaye, first question. We had someone who asked regarding a capacity building grant. Actually, that does not make sense to me.
Regarding a capacity building grant, what's the definition of political? Okay, I think I know what this is. What's the definition of a political subdivision? So a political subdivision is usually going to be like local government, like a county, city. That's what they mean by political subdivision.
Okay.
Yeah. That's actually a very good question, Rosalie, because I work with local governments and they're often like, it says political subdivision. Does this mean we're eligible? I'm like, yes, it means you are eligible.
Okay. Another one from Kevin. He said, say you're applying for a grant from a foundation or corporation large enough that it's just a portal application and you can't find a person to connect with. When you can't do individual outreach and build that relationship before writing and reporting, where do you shift your focus in the preparation phase?
That's a great question. So you with those kind of online portals, if it is a large foundation that maybe has like a local, for example, a local store. So I know for some of the Target grants, that you have to apply to the online portal, but there are local Targets all over. So if you go to the local Target and you speak to the manager there, they may be able to and have them kind of understand what your organization does, the needs of the community, why it's important. Some of those online portals sometimes ask you for the name of a staff person. And so if you have built a relationship with the local branch manager, the local store manager, and you put their name down, and you also let them know that you are submitting, for this grant, and you would like their support. That is one way you can build that relationship. For the ones that are larger that don't have a local, like a local store, or a local office that you can engage someone there. To be honest with you, it is a challenge to really know if it is truly a fit and you're kind of just at will with all of the other applications that are getting submitted. And they're just mostly focused on what you've submitted on paper. So you really have to make sure that your program and the project, your organization has built enough results and has results from the work that you've done and that you can write about and shape that you have a compelling case and evidence of your work in what you submit on that online application. So it's really either you can't build a relationship either way with that corporation. Then it's really focusing on making sure you have the most robust, compelling program, project, services, and you really put forth a compelling case when you're writing and putting that application forward.
That's great. Thank you. Um, how do you build a relationship with local foundations? And this kind of touches on the same thing. I'm sure we could talk about this for a while.
We could, and I do cover this in my workshop, which is like 3 hours. There are different ways you can build a relationship with a local foundation. For one, they have to know that you exist. One of the ways to build a relationship with a local foundation is to go to places that these local foundations are going to. So going to local community events, going to local meetings where they're going to be, introducing yourself. So networking in places that, and locally in places that they may be, and then also reaching out to them directly to introduce your organization and the work that you're doing. And so it's an art with, engaging that local foundation, where your first engagement is not really to sell them on your organization or to ask them for money, but to get to know them a bit more. And then really just showing up locally at places that they might be. Even if they're not there, networking locally so that other community organizations, other community stakeholders know and recognize your organization also helps when you are engaging local foundations, because they may hear of your good work from others. I've had that experience where a local foundation actually contacted our nonprofit because they heard of our work from someone else. And it was pretty much, they're like, we want to give you this grant. You just need to send us something on paper.
That's the dream.
So really building your reputation in the community is how you really get on the radar of these local foundations sometimes.
That's perfect. And when someone submitted a question, it was while you were talking about keywords and defining your keywords, are you just referring to Google search, or is this just any search, even in like a grant database?
Any search, including a grant database. I will tell you, Google is great though. So even if you don't have a grant database, you can use those keywords and the keyword search tips that I shared today within Google, but you also can use those in a grant database as well, including federal grants too, for federal grants and grants.gov.
Perfect. And someone asked if you could expand a little on the relationship phase or what that means to you.
Yeah. So I do teach this in my framework, and the relationship phase is you are using that to qualify, to help you determine, is this funder a fit before you submit, before you spend time writing a whole grant, is it a fit? And you're also using it to gain information in terms of what they look for when they're selecting organizations to award grants to. You're using it to gain information on what their specific process is. And the relationship phase, even though it's the phase after you find a grant or a funder, it really doesn't stop at that point, because even if you are awarded, you are going to continue you're now in a partnership with them. And even if you're not awarded, you still want to maintain that relationship with that funder to gain insight on, how you could better the application, what your organization could do differently. And even to help you determine if you should try again. So the relationship phase is twofold. It's one, to determine, is this funder a fit for us? And if they are a fit, like, you're gaining kind of that inside scoop on, like, what is it that you look for? What is of interest to your foundation? What is of interest to your government agency? And you're also learning a little bit about the process as well. And you build a strong enough relationship with that contact person for that funder. Usually it's called a program officer. They will be your best friend. They will bring other funders to you. When you have a question, you can go to them and they will answer right away. And they are really going to be your advocate after your application is submitted. So the relationship phase is really kind of beyond it. The beginning, the building of the relationship is after you find the funder, but the relationship continues even beyond that.
That's really good. Thank you. Well, it looks like we may have answered all the questions here.
Yes.
Can you go ahead to the next slide, Lesa-Kaye, if you don't mind?
Sure.
So here's our contact info. Lesa-Kaye shared some amazing resources, which we will be linking in the follow-up email that goes out tomorrow. So keep an eye out for that. If you have any questions, feel free to reach out to her for more grant advice and guidance, or get in touch with us here at QGive. Thank you, everybody, for joining, and keep an eye on your inbox tomorrow.